if you don't share your work, if you don't share your ideas, if you don't share who you are, what if that was selfish? What if you thought of it as being selfish because you were keeping that just for yourself and you weren't putting it out there in the world for someone else to learn from?
Welcome to Manage Chaos Podcast, where we give you the startup business rundown in less time than it takes for you to get to work.
We are on the last episode.
I'm actually so sad.
The time goes by so fast.
So fast.
Of our 4-episode arc with Taylor Harrington. Taylor is a community experience designer, a speaker, and the biggest cheerleader for doing what you love, and also just an all-around fun person.
Well, thank you.
And so, Taylor, one thing that you have also helped me be better at, and so I really wanted to focus this episode on stop waiting to be discovered and build your own stage. Get out there and do the damn thing.
Do the damn thing.
Right? So let's talk about why sometimes founders have trouble bragging. There is a lot more of this build in public out there now. But I think a lot of people are always like, oh, let me wait until I have this list of wins before I go out and I talk about it. Or like, what if something goes wrong? So how do we reframe that for ourselves?
Well, I think a lot of the build in public narrative is a lot about those professional wins typically, or those professional moments that are kind of adding up over time. I like to think more about the personal ones that are related to who you are inside and outside of work. So I'm obsessed with the phrase identity capital, which is this idea that your identity compounds over time. So when I was in my first job working with Seth Godin, Seth used to make us lunch at the office every day. It was amazing. It was so good. It was always served in these like giant big bowls, and you stood while you ate, and it didn't matter what we were eating. They were always in these big bowls. It was so good. Anyways, Seth was away at a conference one day, and all of us were like off to fend for ourselves for lunch, and we went and got sushi. And I remember walking back from sushi, and one of my teammates, it was really early on to me being on this role, and he said, oh, once you're done working here, once you move on to the next thing, whatever that time comes, you're gonna be a completely different person. And I just said, no, I'm not. I was like, I don't believe you. I don't believe that. I said, I'm just on a journey to become more and more myself. Yeah, I'm just me. And I think that framing, I think so often people kind of default to quickly saying like, oh, I'm a totally different person now. X, Y, and Z happened in my life and I'm a totally different person. And I just don't believe that. I think that there's so much about who we were as kids that then we continue to, lean into more. And sometimes we veer off of that path for one reason or another. But the more we can kind of recalibrate to what is that true north of who we are, I think that's just fascinating. That's what people want to learn about, is like what makes you you. And so when I think about the building in public, it's like, how am I building my identity in public? How am I known for who Taylor is and what I care about more than just the work that I do? And I think that is a way more interesting way to show up online. And even in Dreamers and Doers, even some of the articles that we publish are more about the person than they are actually about the business. And that's by design. And I think that, celebrating those personal wins, even like on the last episode, we just talked about boundaries. I'm like, yeah, that might not be like a win from like a very typical standpoint, but I think it's totally a win. And I think that's something that you should be sharing online because of the ripple effects it could create. It can create
for other people.
Yeah. Going back to that word watashiato we talked about on, I think, the second episode. It's, this idea of like, how are you creating that impact by showing up online? And the last thing I'll say on this piece of things, because again, clearly you're getting me fired up. I could talk about this all day long. One of the things I learned working with Seth is he has this theory that if you don't share your work, if you don't share your ideas, if you don't share who you are, what if that was selfish? What if you thought of it as being selfish because you were keeping that just for yourself and you weren't putting it out there in the world for someone else to learn from? And I just love that idea of like, why are we gatekeeping?
Such a good reframe.
Such a good reframe. How can we be generous in how we share? Not that we need to share everything, but how can we be generous in how we show up and share who we are so that it inspires someone else or helps someone else have that aha moment?
And I think the most important thing there is also not only sharing the wins,
yeah.
Right? And as a culture, we tend to not want to share the failures, right? And we shy away from being like, hey, I tried this thing and it didn't work, right? But then people don't learn from that, and it doesn't get normalized. You don't get to see that this person is still successful. They had this failure. They were able to actually rebound from it. And when we only show the good stuff, when people who are falling behind us hit a stumbling block, they don't feel like they can continue. Because it doesn't seem like anybody else ever hit one.
Yeah. Well, and I think one of my favorite things to do in the building in public type of model is also dreaming in public, putting out a dream.
You're very good at that.
Well, thank you. I'll give an example. Last year, I was like, and I've done this now, I want to say 2 or 3 times. I just declared I'm going on a podcast tour. I was like, I'm going on a tour. I had nothing booked. But hi, I'm on a tour. If you have a podcast, these are the things I love chit-chatting about. These are the kinds of audiences I'm obsessed with. I'm building my tour. Do you want to be a part of it? And I got so many amazing inbound requests. I got so many amazing comments, people saying, oh, I have a podcast. My friend has a podcast I think you would be a great fit for, etc. And that type of stuff, like, I love when I see people do that because that's not even the win. That's like the I'm putting myself out there so that in 6 months from now, I'm celebrating the win. And I think that takes time. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of being able to do that is surrounding yourself with the right people. So on LinkedIn, for example, being really smart about who am I interacting with on here on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. I was just talking to a founder the other day who's like, I pivoted my business. She just like completely went in like a different direction. And she's like, the people I'm connected with on LinkedIn are like people from high school that would be like, what the hell is she doing? And then also all these VCs. And she's like, I'm not in the VC world anymore. And so she needs to rebuild that for herself and really create that list of who do I want to engage with? Who do I want to meet more of, et cetera. And so then once you've done a little bit of that work, that's when I think it makes a little bit more sense to start dreaming out loud because those dot connectors are in, they're in your orbit right there.
Yeah. It does sometimes feel though that you're shouting into the void on things like LinkedIn.
And you just gotta let that go.
And you just gotta do it.
You
because
never
at
know.
Some point, so I had someone reach out to me who became a client who basically said, I've been following your content for 7 months.
Wow.
And I really love it.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what I said? Could you have given like any kind of reaction, a comment, anything? Something? Nothing? No? But now they're a client and it's fantastic. But so you never know who's watching.
You never know.
Because they may not be commenting. They may not be reacting. They may not be engaging. But they're lurking.
I find this to be the funniest in person. I go to like a New York City event and someone's like, I remember what you wrote 9 months ago. And I think about it all the time. And then 3 months ago, you wrote X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, what? You read this? So it's like, that's where it's like funny to me is like, who's lurking? And you have to just trust that they're there. We know they're there. And, I've been there where I've thought, oh my God, this post totally flopped. Like so awkward. And I think it's just embracing that not everything's going to hit in terms of engagement. But it still might be the thing someone needs to hear that day, and they just might not react to it for some reason. One of the things that's fascinating about LinkedIn is the fact that, like, literally everyone that you've ever met, high school friends, college friends, professors, your old boss, your coworker you hated, like, everyone's connected to you, in addition to all the new friends that you're making and the founders you're surrounding yourself with and other community members. And if you like something or you comment on something, you're like suddenly on blast in people's feeds and you have no idea whose feed you're going to be on. So I get being nervous about liking or commenting. And so you just kind of got to let that go that, some people are going to be lurking and that's okay.
One good thing too, though, is using community to help amplify.
Totally.
So it's sort of even sending the message and being like, I just put out this post and maybe I'm not sure about it. Can you go give a reaction or give a comment or write something so that, like I can feel better about it?
Yeah. One thing in that example of, let's say you got featured in an article, okay? I think you said Business Insider was the recent one. Mm-hmm. It's like in that example, people always say, how many posts can you cut out of like one nugget of like new information or something? And I like to think the way we talk should also mimic how we write often. And so if, for example, like this is how I would do that. If I got featured in Business Insider and I was like, oh my God, I love this feature so much, what I would do is I would record a voice memo and I would think of a friend or maybe it's a potential client, like in your case, and I would literally say their name. So let's say you were the person, I would literally record a voice note and be like, hi, Katrina, I just got featured in Business Insider and this is why it matters to me. This is what someone's not seeing about this feature. This is the thing that I hope lays the foundation for what comes next. And I would just rant for 10 minutes in this voice note about all the things that are happening around this feature that make this feature possible, that are making me excited. And that's where those nuggets come out that are like really real and human because A, you're talking to a friend, you have a particular person in mind. So when you write the post, it feels like you're talking to a friend. When you write the post, get rid of the like, hi Katrina part. But could you imagine? I'm going to do that now.
Everybody's tagging me on LinkedIn.
Yeah, it's so weird. I've told friends when I think of them, when I write posts, I've said like, oh, I wrote this post thinking about you. And it's such an honor. My friends are like, oh my God, like this was written for me. I can feel that. So I would say when you do have something that you want to brag loudly about, think about those other moments around it so that you can capitalize on that feature or capitalize on that win from a few different angles and just kind of like drip it out that way.
Yeah, one of the behind the scenes things, they actually came to take photos. They said, we really want to come take photos in your workspace. And I was like, you mean like in the corner of my living room?
Oh,
my house?
Have you met my cat?
The cat is heavily featured.
Oh my God.
She actually said, will he get on the desk? I was like, will he?
Wait, I need to see these.
You need to see the photos. Yeah, Rocky's right there front and center on the desk, and Pistachio's trying to climb onto the chair in the photo. The best part, though, is when she said, will he get on the desk? As though he does not spend
like literally half of his day.
90% of the time
That's
on
so
the desk
funny.
trying to type Slack messages
Right.
to people. One thing we have in common, I think you call it a wavy path, I call it sort of a jungle gym. I feel like a lot of people, it's becoming more common, but back in the day, in the 1900s, when I was growing up, people thought it was a ladder. It was always a ladder.
Yeah, you gotta
You're
climb the
climbing
ladder.
the
Right.
I really love this concept of it doesn't have to be a ladder.
Yeah.
It can be what you create it to be, right? And sort of this, I think you put it really well before. I do like to say I have a past life, but we can talk about that's a conversation for another time. But I do think you're essentially creating yourself as you go through life, right? You're not getting to a destination.
Yeah,
it's
you're becoming more and more
evolving,
you.
right?
Yeah, it's compounding.
And so let's talk a little bit about how you can kind of design a career path that is whatever it should be for you.
Yeah. I'm in the middle of redoing my website right now. So speaking of the wavy path, where I explain some of that. And it's interesting because I was saying to this designer that I'm working with, she's a great friend, her name is Sam Hample. And I was saying to her, if people say like, oh, you have to climb this ladder, I think about the board game Chutes and Ladders where you like fall down. I'm like, okay, but what happens when you go down this chute and then you have to climb a different ladder? And so that's more of the energy of what is that wavy path that like you don't quite know what's going to kind of bring you down, or you're going to suddenly get on a ladder that you didn't expect. That's why I like paths, but I think Jungle Gym is a great visual as well. And I think that, as we map out this life we're living, not to quote him once again, but when I was my first day in the working world, I was working, like I said, with Seth Godin, and I went with him to a conference in DC. And the one thing I like really took away from that conference is he has this visual on the screen. So he was presenting there, and it was all of these dots. And he talked about some people in life collect dots. They collect the awards, they collect the fancy title, they collect the nice house, whatever the thing is. But some people connect dots, and some people realize, how am I going to get from here to that next thing that I want? And it's not linear. It's this other dot that's maybe unexpected. But sometimes those dot connectors don't actually know what the next dot is. And that's what I really loved about what he said, was instead you have to trust you're on that line that will get you to the next dot. You can't say what the dot is. Yeah. We can't expect it. But instead, you have to trust that I'm on a path that will lead me somewhere that's really good. And I don't know, but I'm going to trust it. When I think about creating more of those moments, I think about right now, I think is a really funny moment to record this podcast because I'm really trying to dial up my speaking this year. And so, like I said, in this process of redoing my website, I'm like, who am I? How do I explain this? What am I looking for? Who do I help? And in doing that, like, I don't really know the destination.
Yeah.
But I know there's like a lot going on that's really good. And I just need to keep planting those seeds and putting those dots together that I can trust that the right thing is going to come from it. So that's how I think about making decisions and building that path.
And I think that's actually the fun part, that it's really, you're not setting the destination, right? It's not a checklist, right? It's sort of a state of being.
And then suddenly you have to enjoy the journey because you're like, well, I'm on a journey, so here I go.
And you're on the journey regardless.
Yeah.
My husband has helped me to really embody this more. I used to be very much like the checklist kind of person. And we just went to Hawaii And
so
my mom's
nice.
like, what are you doing? And I'm like, we're going to Hawaii. And she's like, but while you're there. And I'm like, well, I just know we're going.
Yeah, right. That's such a good example. Yeah.
And she was like, what? And I was like, yeah, I know. He's really calmed and mellowed me out. Like, we'll just figure it out when we get there.
Wow.
And so I had 2 signpost things that I knew I wanted to do booked. But then other than that, we were just like, let's just
Here we go.
see where the wind takes us. And my husband's very much like a let's live till then kind of person. And I've always been very much a planner. And so it's fun to see how that comes together over the course of 12 years to design this like more relaxed version of a very type A New York City personality.
100%. And I would argue that's what we need in a relationship, is that person who mellows us out a little bit.
It is true.
Compliments us, but like stretches us in new ways.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's a whole nother podcast.
We now have like 900 ideas.
We do have a bunch of ideas. This is the last episode of our 4-episode arc with Taylor. So we are so very sad to see Taylor go. You can find out everything about Taylor in the show notes of each of the episodes that she's been on. And we thank her so much for coming on and spreading her joy and confetti.
Thank you for creating this container for me to do so. I really appreciate it.
So please like, follow, and subscribe Managed Chaos Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And we will see you on the next episode.
Outsourcing your US tech talent shouldn't be hard. With Pobble.io, we deliver high-quality teams on demand and provide huge cost savings to your business. Try it now at Pobble.io. Mention the amazing guys at Managed Chaos when you email us and get a free market data report. Email contact@Pobble.io.